It is about growing the whole person and helping people ask the right question and finding ways to be resourceful, whether or not for their own life or whether to make them much more useful, much more valuable employee for the company.
I love the starting point with being curious, because I think we're not curious enough in general. I think we're just so busy in our daily lives, as you point out, that often we go by without asking enough questions or the right questions.
My eye lit up when you use the word democratize coaching, because that is the first two words that we have it in the workshop to say whatever we are trying is we are trying to democratize coaching.
Welcome to another episode of Relearning Work, where we dive into the future of learning and work. In each episode, we bring you conversations with leaders from industry and education to challenge assumptions, propose ideas, and share learnings as we all navigate this world that is being reshaped by agentic AI. Now, whether you're an educator, a student, or a business executive looking to stay ahead in this rapidly changing landscape, there's something here for you. I'm your host, David Yip. My guest today is Associate Professor May Sok Mui Lim, a trailblazer in transforming higher education through coaching, and she's also the Assistant Provost for Applied Learning at the Singapore Institute of Technology. May's on a mission to promote coaching as an integral part of our learning experiences in higher education and beyond. Last year, she co-authored the book, Coaching Students in Higher Education, a solution-focused approach to retention, performance, and well-being. To share her experience as a certified solution-focused coach, her research insights, and practical applications with her background also as a trained occupational therapist. May spearheads SIT's innovative lifelong learning initiatives, including the Certified Practitioner in Lifelong Learning Competency Development program. C4C. She's bridging coaching, learning science, and competency-based education. In addition, May was a visiting researcher at UNESCO's Institute for Lifelong Learning, and that's provided her a global perspective around insights and skills in productivity and across markets. Her impact and innovation in education has been recognized by Singapore's National Day Honours, a Public Administration Medal, and multiple Teaching Excellence Awards. What a privilege it is to have you on the show today. Welcome, May.
Thank you for inviting me here, David.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, May, how did you come to be at the forefront of skills and coaching SIT? Could you give us a brief background how you got here?
I think it was a story to share in the sense that it is one where I learned that I really need to be more curious. I'm always curious, but sometimes where we are very busy, you can kind of just assume that you already know certain things and not want to learn anymore. But I think there was this chance opportunity where the university decided to say, okay, why don't we send a few senior leaders to learn more about coaching? And on one side of me, I was like, oh, I'm an occupational therapist. Of course, I know how to coach. It's just about asking the right question. But when I actually started observing my other colleague, whom I have great respect for, signing this up and saying that I'm already a career coach, but I'm going to be curious and continue learning. And I wondered, wow, what makes her so curious to keep wanting to learn? I became curious. So I joined that program, and that was transforming. It really, really made me realize that I wasn't curious enough. And to be a really good learner, I need to be much more intentional in learning, asking the right question, and how coaching can really be transformative.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the starting point with being curious, because I think we're not curious enough in general. I think we're just so busy in our daily lives, as you point out, that often we go by without asking enough questions or the right questions. And right now in AI, it's all about asking questions, right? Finding answers is easy. Asking questions is not so much.
And asking the right question is the important one.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a question our audience might want to know more about SIT, Singapore Institute of Technology. It's a relatively new institution, right?
Yes. Singapore Institute of Technology, SIT for short. We have many different programs all the way from engineering to health sciences to accounting to hospitality business to ICT. It is a full-fledged university, and we are actually third largest in terms of the intake size. And I think what is exciting is that we have moved to the Punggol Digital District, and this is where we co-locate with lots of employers, and the whole digital district comes to life when you visit us, because this is where one building is the office building, the next building is actually part of the university. You can barely tell apart where is the classroom and where is the offices. And this opens up lots and lots of opportunities for companies to work together with the universities.
Yeah. So it's not just co-working, it's co-learning, it sounds like.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that leads me to a question that I always ask my guests on this podcast is challenging assumptions and getting to the right mindset. Because I think when we think about universities, sometimes people assume universities are this big sprawling campus, and obviously you go there to learn, but it's not really a place to have offices there. Real businesses having offices there, and you're kind of challenging that status quo at SIT, right? By having offices co-located with students.
Yeah, we are. I think coming back to the question of assumption, one of the biggest and most important assumption that I hold on to tightly is that we need to recognize that people can be resourceful. So when we are talking about students coming in, whom some of them can be struggling because the course is tough, or some whom they might be admitted, but you are wondering like, oh, how are they going to get through? Or some who coming out to the market and wondering like, where do we start? And are asking all those questions about how do we start? Because this is a world where AI seems to be taking over the job, and a lot of new grads are becoming very worried about their future. But the big assumption we have to remember is that people can be resourceful and they are able and capable of making change for themselves if we actually help empower them to discover their strength and discover their resources. So whether or not we are talking about the AI world where jobs can be now challenged, or students who might be struggling because of lots of stress and isolation, how do we actually help them realize that you can be resourceful, and how do we have those conversations in order to help people find their own strength and find their resources to move forward?
Yeah. Actually, just on that one, I guess helping people realize they can be resourceful. I guess in the Asian setting, is there an assumption that you find students come into a university and they expect to learn from this expert lecturer to tell them everything? I think the saying is the sage on the stage. Like someone, they go to lecture theater, they just take information. Is there that expectation? Is there a mindset shift that needs to occur for the student to take agency and go, I'm going to bring information to the university and get support back?
I think it's a blessing that cuts both ways, because we are indeed blessed with lots of students who are highly respectful. They look up to the professors, they see you as the expert. Yeah, they are taking in like sponge things that you are teaching them. And most of the time, they wouldn't be challenging you too much because they assume that you are the expertise and therefore I'm here to learn, which is really good when it comes to the respect part of the house. But at the same time, you are right, David, that sometimes because they see you as the expert, when there is a problem, they come to you hoping that you will be the one to point them the right solution, or actually tell them what to do, or give that perfect advice so that the problem can be solved. And this is where encouraging students to take agency and actually helping them realize what are the resources out there to address their concern, address their worries, so that they own it. I think that's just helping us realize that we're no longer just solving a problem, but we are growing a person. And I think universities, given that lots and lots of content can be found online, and with agentic AI, lots of things can be done for you, it is about growing the whole person and helping people ask the right question and finding ways to be resourceful, whether or not for their own life, or whether to make them a much more useful, much more valuable employee for the companies. Because you can imagine, if we are training students who knows how to be resourceful, who knows that they can solve problems, they will be so much more confident and valuable to the company beyond what AI can offer.
Yeah. Actually, you touched on the confidence as a really important factor, and to help students build their confidence, because I think that's something that is quite challenging for students, because they may, I know this is my assumption, they may start off thinking, oh, I'm still learning, so I'm not very confident and I need to get more experience to build that confidence. Even if I think I know something, but this is a professor I'm talking to, he or she must know more than me. How do you build that confidence to, maybe challenge existing ideas or put forward your own idea that is worthy to be considered when you're just starting out? And on the flip side as well, to, I guess, educators and professors and people who's been in the field for a long time, to be able to maybe open the aperture and be constantly curious and inquisitive, even from people who, their students, for example, learning from their students. So how do we actually make sure that this always has a vibrant exchange of knowledge?
it goes back to our first point about being curious, because quite often we would have students coming up to us hoping to get solution or problem solve something that they are having difficult with. If we are curious about how have they solved their problems in the past and asking those right questions about, like, I'm sure this is not the first time in your life that you encounter stress. How did you help de-stress in the past? What worked? What didn't work? Like, this is probably not the first time in your life that you have got group dynamic issues, for example. What did you manage in the past? What worked and what didn't work? What could work? I think it's having those conversations and getting them to explore who they are, what they own, and who else can they be speaking to? What other approach could there be out there that it helps to them gain solution, but beyond gaining that solution is helping them grow as a person. So in coaching, we have a term that we say a good coach should not be coaching the problem. It should be coaching the person. And I think in the university context, while the main job that we are hired to do is to teach a content and prepare them to become that professional, the content teaching is important, but what would be even far more valuable is our time and our ability to coach them to be that resourceful, confident person who knows that actually there will be lots of challenges in life, that my employer is going to give me different problems to solve. But in order to be able to do that, I need to keep thinking about how did I get through this in the past? Like, what is the resources that I could tap on? What else have I not considered? Who else should I be speaking to? So us being curious in the first place as professor and not dishing out our solutions and getting the students to be curious in wondering like what else, some of those fundamentals that is important. But at the same time, because we are also time poor, we often do not give enough time to let those conversations take place. And which is a real pity, because when it comes to learning very good content, whether is it to do coding or really to learn your anatomy and physiology, you could go on the website and pick really, really good content out there. So it really starts questioning how else can university play a real role beyond just dishing out content, but helping students learn, helping them validate their skills, and importantly, build them towards a really highly capable, resourceful, confident individual who can solve society problems.
Actually, one thing I do want to ask, maybe a controversial one, is this whole notion of content and the university's role in delivering content versus something else. So as you pointed out a few times, you can get great content off YouTube, right, for free. There's numerous sources on the internet. So if you're an academic in an institution and you're used to delivering your content, right, that you've spent a long time researching or your institution has, how do you actually stay relevant when your students may be learning from other sources of content more so than yours, so in this world where content comes from everywhere, not just your institution, but not just from education, it could be from workplaces, from influencers, from all sorts of channels, right? How does the role of a university, of an educator, change?
University continues to play an important role in ensuring that the program that we are developing, the students that we are putting the job to say graduated, past whatever term you use it, that they are able to be that professional that the society is looking for. That gives us the license or the social license to operate when we graduate students who know the stuff. So the role of assessment and assessing them to be making sure that they are demonstrating the competence that we are assuring the society is important. Whether or not they've taken that content from what I've created or curated, those are options. I think because in this world there's so much content out there, students often get confused as well if you just leave them to 10 web pages and say, yeah, learn whatever you like, because it can be very confusing. So part of the role is still ensuring that when it comes to guiding on contents, we are helping to guide them to what is important to learn at this stage, before the next stage, and then the next stage. But at the same time, students who are very fast in learning, they can move at a different speed, right? So that's where
Yeah.
personalized learning and fixed flexibility learning comes in. But at the end of it, where is that gatekeep to say that when I say this student have an SIT degree, we are proud and we are assured that these guys know what they're doing, and we have satisfactorily assessed them to say that they know these competence, so that the employers who are hiring them can be confident of who we are hiring. So when it comes to content, whether or not is it teaching the content or assessment of the content, the role of university still plays a part. But I think where we can additionally value add is where we no longer just only focus on the content, but in building this whole person. And that helps you distinguish your graduate, because your graduate is not just one who have the content, can do the job. But when you throw them a new problem that has never been taught, has never been
Yeah.
accessed, wasn't part of your curriculum, can they
Yeah.
also say, look, boss, I haven't been taught by my
Yeah.
prof, but I can be resourceful. Just give me a
Yeah.
week. Let me find
Yeah.
out some solution and I'll come back to you and see which one might work the best. So that we're no longer just training them on that first job, but the way they are thinking, the way they are capable of learning. Yeah.
Yeah. So that you've taught them how to learn. So through the way you've curated content, not necessarily delivered content, but you've curated the material that they've found online themselves, perhaps,
And
and how you're,
assessment.
and assessing it,
Mhm.
and help them understand, maybe even think critically to distinguish between good content versus bad content, or not so good content versus better content. That's a pretty hard thing, especially with the AI tools these days. They can spit out very convincing material, but when you look at it, it's not quite right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the bare minimum we should be getting at is making sure that the students have learned what we promised that they should be learning, and
Yeah.
that in that transcript they have learned what they have learned, so that the
Yeah.
companies can be assured. But beyond that, to help them be really valuable is where we actually find ways to help grow them to be that really resourceful, critical thinker.
Now, how do you mentioned the learning that they need to have accomplished? How do you determine that? Because things are changing so rapidly, right? And how do you decide what they need to learn? Because, for example, ChatGPT and all this AI, that's stuff that we are expected to know day to day. 3-4 years ago, it wasn't there, and it takes a long time for curriculum to be developed and learning content to be developed and so on. Now, what is it going to be like in another 3 or 4 years? Who knows? How do we know what to teach people, what to learn?
There is two side of the story. So first side of the story is where we have been pioneering and leading on competency-based education. So when it comes to competency-based education, we are talking to the employers, we are co-creating with the employers, we are really going down to the professional roles to say what is it that they need to be able to do in order to be that valuable employee that this sector,
Hmm.
this industry is looking for. And from there, we map backwards to thinking about how do we assess them to make sure that they can demonstrate those competency, and then we map backwards to say what do they need to learn in order to develop those competency. So the competency that we are training them for is still very much having the competency that the employees are looking for. So, and that changes, which means the conversation have to be more often, and the conversation have to be, we need to humble ourselves to say that what we learned 20 years ago may not be what the student need to know now, because some things
Yeah,
can be automated already. So
yeah. Or
therefore,
even 2 years ago. Yeah,
exactly. So we need to really be curious and listen to the employees to say, hey,
yeah,
they need to know this stuff. I need them to be able to do this. So
yeah,
that's one part of the equation. At the same time, because the competencies that are required is changing so fast. So 2 years later, again, you might be surprised that, oh, whatever they have just learned is no longer needed. It's not that it's invalid, but the fact that it's automated, so it's no longer needed.
yeah,
So what do
yeah,
you now need? So this is on the other side of the story where we say, teach them how to think critically, teach them how to be resourceful. So some of those way of thinking, of learning, we need to help them grow the skills. So while learning the competencies of how to be a good therapist, of how to be a good accountant, those are really important. That the other part of the story is really developing that brain, that mindset of learning and being able to be critical and to being able to be resourceful. Yeah.
yeah,
And you can't do one without another, because I don't believe a place that just say that, oh, I'm just teaching my students how to be critical. Like, on what
yeah,
basis do you do that?
yeah,
And I'll
yeah.
be pretty worried to hire a therapist who have not learned how to transfer a patient, how to do a proper assessment, and just say, oh, but I'm a very critical thinker. I'm like, nah, that's not good enough, right?
Yeah, so you do need to have those deeper, I guess, technical subject matter skills and
Yes.
knowledge, but also broader, durable, transferable skills like critical thinking, problem solving, curiosity. Yeah, and you need both. So it's not one or the other. And I kind of call it the T-shaped person. It's got some deep expertise in a particular domain and got a lot of experience, a lot of skills. Some might call it soft skills, some might call it transferable skills, but just broader human skills that you can take from one skill, one job, one industry to another. That's probably where coaching comes in, right? Because coaching, actually, can you elaborate more on coaching? Because you're the expert in this area. A lot of people, they confuse the word coaching with mentoring. It's kind of used interchangeably. What is the difference, really?
When it comes to coaching and mentoring, let's start with mentoring. So with mentoring, often it is learning from someone who quite often have the same professional background, or whom you have a good relationship with, whom you respect. So therefore, that mentor-mentee relationship is such that you are learning from this person whom you know have lots of wealth of knowledge or lots of experience whom you can learn from. So they will be teaching you the way to be thinking of, the traits that this profession is looking for. So, and after they are the one who's giving good advice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike mentoring, coaching comes from the space where you assume that you do not know the answer. So even though I may be expert in occupational therapy, or even though I know a lot about coaching, I have to assume that you, whoever that I'm coaching, holds the answer. It's no longer my answer is the best answer. It's no longer my solution, which is the best solution. Whereas with mentoring, quite often you are sharing what you learn along the way. I think both can be useful at different juncture, but coaching often kind of pushes and works the coachee really, really hard in terms of coming out with a solution that's innate in them and getting them to own it as well and being very accountable to carry it out. I guess when you think about the word thoughts coach, who's working the hardest? It is the coachee who's doing all the weight lifting and the exercises, right? And the coach is just there to kind of direct them. But in this way, it's not so much of like the sports, but in this case where the coachee is really using his or her brain really, really hard to be answering those difficult questions that are challenging their status quo that the coach could be asking. Yeah.
So if I think back to this kind of T-shaped way of building up a person, so mentoring, because you're really going deep into a subject matter, you're transferring, my knowledge to you, my experience in this field to you. So I'm mentoring, this area. So going deep into this area. Whereas coaching, even if I do know that area, I'm trying to get you to sort of think through the solution yourself, and it's more of a horizontal, so broader. Let's think about it. Let's see how we can learn from one area to another and transfer. Is that the right way to think about it? One is more asking questions rather than giving answers.
I think when it comes to an educator in the university or higher ed context, we are talking about teaching, mentoring, coaching as the different tools in an educator's toolbox, and all can be used at different places. If I'm talking to a year one student who really did not understand the theory that I was teaching last week, then what they need is for me to clarify and teach them the theory, because it's all new, the knowledge. So you cannot say, let me coach you on this new theory. Like, nah, just do your job and teach them well, because you probably have not explained it well enough that he hasn't got it. Okay. Yeah. When it comes to mentoring someone, maybe in your profession and trying to make the right decision, you might be sharing some of those lessons that you have learned along the way, some of those painful journey that you have walked, like, okay, well, I didn't knew this was going to happen, so perhaps you should consider this as well. And you will be sharing some of these stories.
Applied knowledge. Yeah.
The applied knowledge, yes. And again, you won't be mentoring someone who so-called failed that test because they didn't get that knowledge. Teach them how to do it and help them, give them feedback on how to learn it, right? So that's difference between teaching and mentoring. And to take it further, coaching is where, even though I'm the subject matter expert, I'm the profession, and I knew that I would have a certain advice when it comes to career path, one way or another, but I'm holding it that close to myself and say, you are a unique individual who have your plans, have your strength, and therefore whatever you are looking for, that solution needs to come from you. So we have students who come to us for advice. They would come and ask for advice on, where do you think I should start work? Should I join this private company and be an entrepreneur? Should I go into this special school and so on? If I were to mentor, I would just say, well, this was my journey. And then these are some of the pros and cons you should consider. Yep. So, but if I'm coaching, then I will be asking, what is most important for you in your life for you to achieve? What kind of job do you consider purposeful? 5 years down the road, where do you want to see yourself into? If 5 years down the road, you want to see yourself as a businessman and really being able to open up your own private practice, I would say, start going to the private practice and learn. But if you're saying that, hey, 5 years down, I want to be doing mission work in Africa and I want to be helping the African children go about helping them with special needs and so on. And then I'll say, well, that what aligns is obviously the next job that will bring you to closer to your 5 years later, right? So I need to keep quiet in terms of my own advice on the career track now, not unlike a mentor, because as a coach, you have to help them discover what matters to them is not the same as what matters to you.
It's much more focused on the student agency, helping them, empower them with how they can be successful.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to education, what we are trying to do in the C4C course that you were talking about earlier on, we call it coaching for competency. We are really highlighting that as an educator, you can have all these different toolkit and use them at the right place. When it comes to giving feedback, if it's because student hasn't understood something clearly, if because they haven't understood something, go ahead and teach them, give them feedback so that they can learn. In a separate case, if the student hasn't done well because they are not motivated and not interested at all, this is where the coaching could be more helpful in terms of helping them discover, why am I doing this in the first place? And how else in the past have I been learning something that I'm less interested in? Because they could be failing for different reasons. So instead of always teaching them to assuming they do not know and teaching them a knowledge, we have to decipher, is this somebody who do not know, therefore I teach and I repeat the feedback I'm giving? Or is this someone who actually is a bit lost in direction that I need to coach to help find that purpose? Or is this someone that I need to mentor in terms of help having a conversation about how are you learning? How are you taking your notes? Can we discuss how about the way you're putting your time schedule and so on? So there are different ways of addressing the same issue of a failing student.
Yeah.
But we need to be much more intentional and not just use the same hammer, which is the telling. Let me just tell you what I know and what you do not know yet. In the different occasion, even though they all could have failed.
You're enrolled in engineering, so I'm going to teach you engineering whether you like it or not. Yeah.
Yes, and if the answer is because they do not understand that concept, go ahead and teach them. But if they are really highly unmotivated and they're even questioning, maybe the conversation that you should be having is not about teaching that concept.
Why are you enrolled in engineering in the first place? Maybe you should do a different course. Let me help you find the right course that you should be doing.
Being curious about what matters to them and actually how can I find passion and what gets them curious.
Yeah, I think that is so important. My observation is that a lot of universities are doing that. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's enough of that. Enough focus in that. I think the focus is on the course and the knowledge, but helping students discover in the first place. I think there is an assumption that when a student has enrolled in that course, then they want to do that. They want to be the engineer, right? But sometimes the student may have enrolled in it because they thought they wanted to do that, or that their brother did that, or their parents told them to do that. They haven't quite discovered it yet. And do you think there's enough of this discovery and curiosity and coaching thing in universities today?
I think it is quite difficult to assume that educators naturally know how to coach. And it's almost unfair because when we are hired for the job, they look at, okay, do you have a PhD? What is your PhD in? What subject? And are you the expert in this area? So you are hired because you are the expert in this area. Whether is it quantum physics, is it in autism, is it in dietetic, for example? Yeah. So you are hired because of your subject matter knowledge, expertise. And now we are saying that actually that's not good enough. You need to do something else. It's only fair then if we now equip the educators with these new tools that we are expecting them to do. So it is not fair for a university to just say like, well, from tomorrow onwards, all of you are going to be coaching. That's not fair because they wouldn't have the tool. And if they were to do it, they'll be asking lousy questions. They'll be asking, what do you think? Every other 30 seconds. So it's just not the best question at all. What do you think? So if we do think that coaching is a good tool for educators to have, we need to help to build that capability so that they know how to use coaching conversation. And at the same time, they need to be given the space to do it and finding the right coachable moment rather than just coaching every single time somebody to come and ask you for a question, because sometimes it's not about coaching. So that capability building become ever so important. And David, if I can share a recent research that we completed on coaching. So what we did was we did a research with workplace learners. These are ICT students in IT areas, and because often IT is highly stressful and IT areas move very fast. So these learners are both working and studying at the same time. So what we did was to have them, one group is being coached by external accredited professional coaches. The second group is where we got them to be coached by educators who have learned how to coach. And the third group is where business as usual, they do not receive coaching. They might go to the library, they have the career counseling, they have counseling service for psychological need if needed, but otherwise they do not receive anything extra. So external coach, educator coach, and business as usual, which is whatever the university provides. What was amazing and heartening to know is that we did this across 9 months. And over the 9 months, we found that both the professional group and the educator group, they were the one who we could find result that was significantly different when it comes to goal competence compared to the business as usual. So if I were to show you the graph, you will see two going up high versus the business as usual actually goes down when it comes to the goal competence. So it's telling us that actually coaching does make a difference when it comes to goal competency. But interestingly, when we compare something called self-compassion when it comes to coaching the students, the professional group versus the coach educator group, it was only the professional group that makes a difference when it helps students become more self-compassionate towards themselves, being able to empathize the situation they are in and so on, not the coach educator groups. And I guess that's not quite surprising because after all, the professional coaches have been trained, have been certified to be a full coach, and they will be looking at things holistically, right? Versus the educator group whom are coaching in the context of academic. So students may not be telling them other things that they feel like is not so academically related. And to be fair as well, the educators might not be as capable in terms of coaching holistically. They might be very good in terms of coaching things that are academically related or in terms of the way to juggle the time. So the research is really telling us that coaching works, but what kind of coaches for what purposes is important. And do not expect your professors to be Superman, to be doing every single thing because they have their research, they have their teaching. Yes, they can have coaching conversation, but when it comes to really holistic coaching, leadership coaching, and so on, please do consider that there are experts in the area as well who perhaps the right resources should be brought in to use them at the right time rather than just making sure that the professors are Superman doing every single thing. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that coaching, this new capability has to be developed. Well, first of all, recognized as necessary. Two, it has to be developed at the institutional level as something that's new, that not necessarily we have today, but we have to introduce it and we have to uplift the skills or capabilities of existing people with this new skill, new capability. That a fair statement?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It is because the result shows the difference that it does work. At the same time, don't expect them to solve the world issue because they have now been equipped with capability. They can help your learners be a stronger learners. But when it comes to psychological issues and so on, send them to the counselor, send them to whoever who done their job best, rather than expect that the professors to now does every single thing. But by being equipped with coaching skills, we can be stronger and we can be much more capable educator.
And I think I suspect, given the nature of coaching, so you don't have to be an expert in the field, right? You don't have to know that particular domain. Probably lend itself to be quite important now as we navigate the world of AI, which is evolving very, very quickly. There are very few experts in AI that is evolving as quickly as AI is. So we almost need to adopt a very coaching-centric way of helping each other to navigate this. That's something that is changing on a week-by-week basis, and develop this new institutional capability, a new way of learning, basically, right?
Yep. Yes. I think with AI, given that lots of skill set can be replaced by AI, having coaching conversation to get us be curious about where and what role do we play and what new skill set do we need to develop is important. So coaching our learners and our new graduates about what else do you think you should be developing become really, really important.
I think not just the learners though, but it sounds like the coaching competency also needs to be provided to the staff themselves, to help the teachers teach and the professional academic workforce themselves be able to navigate this landscape too. So they themselves are almost swapping into the learner role themselves too.
Yes, indeed. So for our institution in SIT, we have the coaching for educators program. So the professors all learn about coaching. So it is a workshop that they go through to have that mindset shift about there are times where you do not tell, there are times that you do not give advice, and there are times that actually asking the right kind of question can be more powerful. So in those workshops, they will learn about coachable moments, about where are those times that coaching will work much better than just telling, and those opportunities where they could really make a difference. In that workshop, they will go through assessment as well so that they actually get the feedback on, are they good in listening intentionally? Are they able to ask open questions? Are they able to ask questions that will point towards solution rather than fault finding? How are they able to organize a conversation so that it will be time effective? So this is what we do for the educators. So with that, let land itself in the books that you mentioned about that we published, because once we started doing that, lots of professors were able to do this within their field. It could be the engineering, it could be the business. They were able to realize where they could apply it. And there we put together the different vignettes and the case studies that became a really tangible, practical book for educators to use. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing this across the whole institution at SIT, right?
Yes.
This is across all faculties, all schools, all levels of staff. How far down the track are you in rolling out this coaching program across your institution?
We have done this for the last 4 years. So we have probably more than 250 academic staff trained already. And then beyond the training, we have community of practice, coaching circles for them to continue to catch up and brush up their skills. And people learn to use it at the right time, right place. And we highlight to them that it is now a tool. You take it and you use it. Recently, so what we have started doing as well is to not just keep it within SIT. So this is C4C, the coaching for competency, because we realized that if we were able to start this coaching conversations earlier, perhaps even before the students could come into university, they would be stronger students by the time they come to us. So we started opening up this workshop to the educators in the polytechnic, in the junior colleges, in the high school, or in the workplace, because we could see that this is the entire system, right? The ecosystem where we are in the university, and we are taking students from the high school, the polytechnic, and then we are sending them to the employees, the L&D, HR, who might be good coaches to guide them along as new employees. So we say, well, if we know about this, why don't we actually expand on it and share more about learning sciences, about coaching for feedback? And we started offering this to both people outside of SIT as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you're really delivering this coaching program with ambitions to do it at scale and even beyond your own institution, across the whole Singapore ecosystem.
Yes. At the same time, I should clarify that what we are trying to do is not to run an executive coaching program, because there are many, many excellent executive coaching programs that are out there. So when people sign up to a workshop, the one will say, well, you have not signed up to an executive coaching program. We are not training you to coach C-suite. We're not training you to coach anybody who just want life coaching. We are talking about in the context of education or in the context of workplace, where you are very clear that you are helping your workers, your employees learn and develop in a certain areas. So this is the context. So none of them should walk away feeling that, I can now charge high fees because now I'm an executive coach. Yeah. No, that's not what we are training for. We will send them out somewhere else for other programs for that purpose.
But it sounds like this is pretty much you're democratizing coaching, to coaching the coaches, coaching the public, and to appreciate that this is not just in the realms of executives or senior leaders and corporates, but everyone. This is a basic, fundamental, foundational skill almost to learn how to coach and appreciate this competency itself.
My eye lit up when you use the word democratize coaching, because that is the first two words that we have it in the workshop to say whatever we are trying to democratize coaching, because coaching currently is so expensive and it's often meant only for the high senior leaders or the high pole and so on. But imagine if more people know how to use it at the right time, a lot of our teenagers would not be as isolated and they would not be as troubled, perhaps, if they have those early coaching conversation rather than waiting for them to be in trouble, then send them to counseling. Those coaching conversations could have come far earlier to really gear them up to think of the resources that they might have, versus waiting that things doesn't improve. Can we send them to a psychologist? Can we send them to a counselor? Like
and there's a bit of a bad connotation then as well, right? Because this is coaching is what you get when you get in trouble or when you have a problem. We should be thinking about coaching as something you do all the time, not just when you get into trouble or have a problem.
I think coaching right now is still having that very quite positive connotation that people don't usually, because when you coach, you come from the lens that they have resources, you can be beautiful. So coaching often goes from the lens of being solution focused versus problem. Versus currently, I think when you mentioned about bad connotation is sometimes students can be worried about seeing the counselor, seeing the psychologist, because that's where they worry about what is the image. But in the field of coaching, we also tell our coaches, our educators, that if indeed the student does have some mental health condition, they need to be referred to the right professionals. If indeed there are troubles that are really worrying them, it is the counselor who needs to be referred to. So you don't just coach everyone. So therefore, that skills of learning when to coach is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess based on your journey now in rolling out coaching at scale across your institution and also into other organizations as well, what learnings can you impart for our listeners? What are the, I guess, initial pushbacks, initial challenges to get this thing going? Because I can imagine to get it started probably was quite difficult, right? Now that you've got it going, you've got a bit of momentum behind you, it gets easier. But how did you get it started in the first place, and what can people expect, and how hurdles to overcome?
One of it is to find your initial champions for people who believe in this, because you will meet with skeptics who don't think it works. At the same time, it is perhaps true that some people shouldn't coach because it is not in their strength that coaching is the best field. I remember one of my mentor, he went to the coaching course and he decided that, look, May, I've decided I'm not going to go to coaching. I will only mentor. And that's because he has realized that he has a wealth of experience and he loves sharing his experience. And it puts him in such an awkward position that he can't share his experience. He's like, let me just do what I'm good at. Let me continue to be the mentor to give good advice. And I think it's so lovely for him to realize that. Yeah. So when it comes to really rolling it out, I think it was important for us to find the champions, and then we managed to get buy-in from our management as well to see that this is a necessary skill set for the educators. That's where I started rolling out to the different programs, whether it's engineering, whether it's ICT, and so on, that everybody should learn how to coach. Then alongside the way was lots of conversation to support them further, not expecting that just going through a 2 days workshop, people can do this magically. But how do you continue to support that conversations to continue going on, and so that you actually are building that coaching ecosystem. So we keep reminding organizations who want to do this, don't just expect that one or two superman or superwoman to be able to coach everyone in your
Yeah.
institution.
Yeah.
You do need that ecosystem, and it's also that consistency in experience as well, because your year one students might be coached by Professor A. When they struggle with their clinical placement, they could be coached by Professor C. At the point of thinking about career path, they could be coached by Professor D. So the whole idea is that different people all know the same technique. Students can have that consistent experience, but it is after all, the ecosystem that we are building.
Yeah. And so keeping things going over time is what I'm hearing is super important. Not just going to a course and, okay, you're certified now, good luck. How do you keep people motivated to keep coming back, keep getting updated, keep nurturing and contributing back into the ecosystem? And what are the markers or metrics that you use to indicate that you are progressing?
Those learning circles that we talked about were important. In the learning circles, we actually bring back people who are experiencing success to come and share their stories, or experiencing struggle. So where they will bring in case study, and they will actually allow the rest of the attendants to brainstorm, how would I have approached this coaching conversation differently, and so on. So in that aspect, we help people who are on board with this feel supported along the way. That can be very useful in order to bring about that agency in them, that I can do this. And even if I'm stuck, I have that resource to go back to if I need more to keep going. Yeah, then having students who now actually come back and tell us that they were coached and they were grateful for being coached, that becomes really reassuring as well when we actually start hearing episodes of students who are experiencing success because of those conversations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So having student champions, having the staffs themselves share their both good stories and learning stories, and doing it consistently, right, over time, and not just once in a while, but doing it regularly as well.
And doing a research like what I just mentioned to you earlier on, because that is where we systematically measure, and actually having control group to say,
Those data
comparing.
points, yeah.
Yes, comparing people who were not coached. Is it just because of time that everybody improved? No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that having that research and having those research produce the data points, so you have the evidence to really back it up. So you have the qualitative side, people coming back sharing the stories, and or you have the quantitative side with real, quantitative data to go and show how things are improving or not improving, and the benefits, pros and cons. Combining both, I think, is so valuable.
Yeah. And it seems very interesting as well. Recently, we just heard of one of the big banks in Singapore. So
Yeah.
this bank is decided that they want to be equipping their seniors leaders with coaching skills. So they are supporting their seniors leader to be learning coaching and
Mm-hmm.
to be working towards being accredited coach. So
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
means that now their seniors leader would have to clock up 100 hours as part of that process. But you can imagine 100 senior leaders, 100 hours, how big an impact it is going to be for them, employees within those organizations. And you will start hearing stories like this where people appreciate that actually beyond sending people for training, sending them for
Mm-hmm.
more degree, actually coaching can be the delta that makes things work better and for the employee to be even more valuable to the company. Yeah. And if they can experience that already in the university before going out, that will be
Yeah.
outstanding.
The next step then is not just to have the senior leaders, but have also the mid-level and also the entry-level staff as well take on the coaching course. That'd be pretty cool. Everyone have coaching skills in that bank and lead by example. So then have more banks and more companies do that too. Okay, so I know we've been on the conversation for quite a while, and I do want to wrap up. But the question that I would like to wrap up with is, given that we are an education-focused podcast, is about teacher that's really made an impact in your life and how you ended up being now a leader in education. So who's a teacher? It could be a mentor or a coach, actually, since we're talking about coaching, or a manager that's made the most impact, and why.
For mine, it will be Vail Professor Sylvia Roger. So she was my PhD supervisor. Unfortunately, she passed on a few years ago because of cancer, but she was definitely a really, really good mentor that every time I'm stuck, I would be thinking like, what would Sylvia do? I think Sylvia was a really good leader who walked the talk, and she was always into putting her time and effort into doing well what can be most impactful. So instead of being very selective with who she decides to spend time with, she's always very generous, and she is also really wise in terms of doing things that can have that impactful results, I guess. So she's someone that I hold closely to, that I have learned a lot from, and very precious to me.
Yeah. Yeah, having teachers and mentors and coaches is so important, not just certain periods, but along our lifetime. On the show, we've had people talk about primary school teachers and high school teachers, early managers, your PhD supervisor. I think learning from each other, I think that's really the takeaway. Learning from each other and sharing knowledge and coaching each other, is that peer learning is really going to be important as we navigate this rapidly changing world, right?
Indeed, indeed.
So the final segment is more of a fun one, and this is one where I call it plugs. Opportunity for you to plug someone, something, an organization, your institution perhaps, or anything really that you'd like to shout out to. So the floor is yours, May.
So mine would be the podcast by Tim Keller. So because my institution has moved to Pongos, I have to take about an hour train
Yeah.
from where I live to the university. And initially, I was kind of like really reluctant and sulking. But once I actually discovered this podcast, every train ride becomes an excitement because the podcast by Tim Keller has been so good, and how he brings in different aspects of life and history and contemporary issues that could be ongoing and at the same
Mm-hmm.
time could be historical. It fascinates me about how human progresses and yet never progresses. So I would say listen to some of the podcasts by Tim Keller. Yeah, hopefully people will enjoy it as much as I do.
Fantastic. Thank you, May. For me, I plug my own business, I guess. Alumni, we're building Australia's first Earn While You Learn platform. And we are looking for early adopters to come on the journey with us to change this transition from classroom to career. So check out Alumni as on alumni.work. alum.ly.work. And well, that brings it to a close for this episode. Thank you for your attention, and thank you, May, so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and look forward to everyone tuning to our next episode. Thank you.